We're here. We made it.
Mickey, how are you?
I'm good. This is so different from the way that I'm used to recording. So I'm looking forward to this, Richard.
Me too. Yeah, I don't know. There's something, I think I spent so much of my career doing in-home sales that I just like coming to do it in person. You know, like here's the presentation, here's what it is. So we were close by and reconnected. And so just coming by to go over some material and what's going on and cover a bunch of stuff here. Right?
I love that. And, I think we should do an initial interview and then we'll go into this 8-part series that we're going to talk about today. But I just think people need to know you another way. Like I've gotten to know you over the course of the last 5-6 months, but you have a lot more like content of character. And by the way, this is Richard, citizen journalist, in case you guys don't recognize him.
Hey, everyone.
On my channel. He is definitely a traveler. I mean, you're like, boots on the ground type. I want to see what's really going on. And because of the fact that you've been doing that, he brings such a different perspective from so many more angles that maybe we don't see Trump rallies from, or that we don't see DC from. And so for that, I really think we need more of you. I've been saying that for a while.
Yeah. So there's some pretty cool things in the works. Yeah. So I think, so as we're all going through this time and we're seeing things, I've really come to my own conclusion. I think you're talking about it here and a lot of other people as well, that boots on the ground, because I've been saying for a while, seeing is believing. And we're so conditioned to turn on the TV and listen to them read from scripts and start believing that's the reality. And fine, some of it is, some of it isn't. But I've really thought, like, I have this whole idea that like we are the CIA, we are the FBI, we are the intel, yeah. And so a friend of mine who just gave me this car that I'm now driving, and Mickey has done some really kind things for me as well along the way. And all these things are happening. My friend that, we just bought a website called citizennews.network, cool. Which is, if you think about the letters there, it's kind of interesting, citizennews.network. And that's the idea, that we're going to use that and then possibly also creating an app for the App Store where it's literally going to be like, imagine like a heat map. And people are saying, here's what's happening where I am. And it could be anything from the things that I cover, which could be the Walmarts one day with all the weird containers going on, or running into Mickey today and doing this or whatever. The idea is, to have people really just take the power in their own hands with their own cameras and say, here's what's happening where I am. And things are sensitive. So ideas like to say time, date, location, and here's what's happening, and almost create a new media by that. And of course, and then some people will take the initiative to dive deeper and go into, the local court and look into the records, or people do that. My thing is just boots on the ground, but it'll allow us as the citizens and as the creators of all this to expose what we're good at and show. And I think it's a cool thing,
That is really cool. And even when the drops said the news would unlock the map, and here you are moving all over the map, and map comes at 30.
Yeah, I've been around.
Map comes at 30, Bible 30, baby 30. So news unlocks the Bible too. I mean, really, you are opening a new communication center. And I think everyone should start to thrive and strive to be a citizen journalist. I mean, I actually think it's a talent. It takes work, a lot of work, a lot of time, effort, money. And Jesus had asked his disciples if they would drop everything and walk with him. And you kind of came to a point in your life where you just dropped everything and you went. Want to talk about that a little bit?
You sure?
That was brave. Again, not many of us can just up and go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and I think another thing too is people don't really know what it's like to walk in my shoes. And I think you and I were talking a little earlier about that. We can talk a little more, but people make all these assumptions about what it's like. And, and I can tell you, like, I really, like, I had this one person that was help coaching me a little bit. She's like, Richard, you need to take a day of rest one day. We can do these things. I'm telling you, like, it starts, and I have to do a video soon just with some of the people who have helped me along the way. Even this last month I've been out. I mean, it's just amazing organically to see what's happening. Like I got a hold of Mickey, and she helped me out last night with a place to lie in my head. For the last 6 weeks or so, I think I bought one hotel room in 6 weeks. And that was actually not even for me. It was for a friend of mine who hadn't showered in a few months. And I just wanted to help them out with something. And this effort that's been happening on the ground that I don't really show very much, because I don't know what the proper thing is. I want to be delivering the news and what's going on, but all the things in the background I think are important too, so people can maybe get to know me a little better and what it's actually like to be me, and shed some light on that. But just to summarize, what happened was I was working a regular job doing sales, and I just gotten back. I took my mom. So when you're in sales and you're a successful salesman, and that whatever car sales or whatever the sales is, if you're a top performer, you can win prizes. And one of the prizes is the President's Club trip each year. And so my mother and I had just gotten back from the President's Club trip. I took my mom down to Mexico, and it was beautiful, 3 or 4 days, all expenses paid. fun thing with the company and the other top achievers in the company. We get back, and I was just before the Super Bowl. And then the Super Bowl, I remember just being exhausted, and I was all strange. And that's when the COVID thing started. And then a few weeks, and I don't remember the exact times and dates when, maybe you do, when the 14 days to slow the spread began.
Yeah, somewhere in April 2020.
Yeah. So at that time, my CEO called me, and we were friends, and he says, Richard, just letting you know that we're shifting to, you have to wear masks for your presentations. And leading up to that, the 2 weeks or so, everything had stopped. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we did the 14 days or whatever it was, and everything kind of came to a stop. And then Pat was like, Richard, just to let you know, to continue this job, you have to wear a mask. And I was like, well, I'm not, I'm not wearing a mask. And that ended that part of the career.
That's the most honorable thing you can do, by the way. You always have 4 options when they offer to contract with you. You can just say no. Right. You can conditionally accept, be like, sure, I'll wear the mask if you can prove it doesn't cause harm. 3, which is dishonorable, is to acquiesce because you know it's wrong. And 4 is to actually enforce masks because you're too afraid to stand up for what you know is right. So good job. Good on you. You just say hell no.
Right. And those same options apply to many different things. Yeah. Right. So so just start out right from there as no. And then Mickey, what I tell people is like, it kind of feels like, so I always believed in God. I was involved in a youth church when I was a wrestler. Our whole wrestling team went to the same service, little country church in Damascus, Maryland. And what I try to tell people, what makes the most sense to me is it's kind of like I got reassigned because I was just kind of 14 days late, and as a traveling salesman, which is what I was, just like I'm traveling to you, this is something I've been conditioned to do. I mean, when I first started in sales, I had to ace the map books, and I get a call from my boss and he'd say, okay, Richard, you're going to this place at 6 p.m. This is before GPS. And this is DC Metro, probably about 300-mile radius of where I was, my area where I go. And so I get the call at 3 p.m. I had to be somewhere by 6 p.m. and I had to find that address and go to the glossary, look up the street, go then go to the front page and figure out what highways I was taking, route it, and then get there. And then I was doing that for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I remember the first Garmin GPS came out, it was like $1,000. I was like, I'm buying this. And then the GPS came out and made it a lot easier for us. But I've been able to navigate pretty well, and I know how to get around pretty well. People that have driven with me I have a good even to today, I went out to get coffee, came back. I didn't really need a GPS to tell me how to get back here, just because my mind kind of works.
You're not just using navigation to get around. You're navigating who wants to have a voice, who should I give a voice today to, who should do you just let your guides decide who to bring on, who to record, who to film, who to go see, where to go visit next, etc.?
Yeah. So let me take a step back and then I'll get to that. But yes. So basically I remember calling my dad, and my dad's so cool. My dad's voicemail, when you call him, he doesn't answer. It says literally, I know it because I've called him. It says, you have reached Captain Daddy Rich, professional bass fisherman. I am the sheep that got lost. Beep, right? So I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm at Holy Cross Hospital, and Holy Cross Hospital is like this big hospital. 495 is the loop, the beltway the belt that goes around Washington D.C. Holy Cross, there's 2 of them. There's Holy Cross and Nova Fairfax. Nova Fairfax is in Virginia. Holy Cross is in Maryland. So I was driving around. I was like, just after 40 days slow spread. No one was really out and about. Things were weird. This is the whole time when I was like, are you essential? Are you not essential? This, that, and the other thing. Nurses, doctors are heroes. Remember all that? So I'm at this ER and I walk in. I call my dad. I said, Dad, I'm at Holy Cross Hospital. There's nobody here. He says, son, that's impossible. I said, I'm telling you, it's the truth, And he's like, no. So I walk in the ER and I just happen to pull out my camera on my phone, and everyone's wearing the visors and the triple mask, whatever's going on, and the paper suits, and there's plastic everywhere. And it's just like, it was like, what? You remember that scene in ET, like when they're pulling back all the plastic and they're kind of going, yeah. It was like that. So I take a video and then I come back out, I send it to my dad. My dad immediately calls me back and says, Richard, you have to get this on the internet. And I said, well, how do I do that? Because I never had social media. I never had Facebook. I never had Twitter or anything like that. So I just created a Twitter account, downloaded the app, created a Twitter account, and then put it on the internet. And then, and then I kind of just didn't think much of it. And then, I don't know, within 4 or 5 hours, people were calling me that I hadn't heard from in 20 years. Richard, is that your voice on the internet? Richard, we're going to, oh, Mickey, it got bad. I mean, death threats. My brother, this is along the same lines when many of us were experiencing this, that we're either waking up or somewhere along the journey, realizing that we were being had, and relationships started to flounder and fail. But before you knew, I mean, the American Sign Language Institute was sign language in my videos. I remember I was at Shady Grove Hospital some point after this, and there's a line of nurses and doctors wrapped around the outside of the hospital because they sent food trucks, and they're all lined up. And I said to one of the nurses, I said, what are you guys doing out here? Aren't we in a medical pandemic? How is it possible there's 300 of you lined up like this on a nice spring day getting free food from the food trucks.
Yeah.
And the nurse said to me, says, we discharged everybody. There's no one in the hospital. And the American Sign Language Institute started signing that, right? So that's how it all kind of started for me. And I now looking back at that.
Do you think you started the wave of all the people going to hospitals all over the US and filming them?
Yeah. Well,
really
not all over the US. There's a guy named Lance down in Australia, and he got a hold of me through, I think, Twitter or something. He's like, hey, mate, it's the same thing down here in Australia. So he was doing it, and he was sending me the videos, and we were pushing them around, and people in the United. But I do think I was the first one to do it, you know? And I remember being very upset. I mean, I still am to some degree, but I would look at these doctors and nurses, because I'd go in and I'd be in the ER. I'd say, where is everybody? And then, you know, security would come, and they'd put their hands on me and start pushing me out. And I would say to them, I said, how do you guys go home at night?
Yeah.
How do you do this?
Like NPCs.
How do you collect a paycheck and carry on this lie? Are you telling your family that no one's here? When you turn the news on and it's showing refrigerated trucks around hospitals, which is all a fake lie, how do you with a clear conscience collect this check and carry out a lie? I just couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So and looking back at that now, Mickey, because I'm going to get to what you were just talking about. That's where I feel like I was reassigned. You know, I don't know. God kind of said, Richard, this is the way, you know? And then along that journey, and I take some heat. I take a good amount of heat, but I'm so used to it now. I've been accused of so many things.
Oh, we're all swimming upstream, I think.
Yeah, upstream with a lot of current pushing back at us. And but what I like to say now is what it feels like to me now, and this is just my own personal experience. It just feels like there's divine appointment after divine appointment after divine appointment after divine appointment walking into my life.
And every time you complete a task, you get another appointment. It's almost like you're leveling up.
Well, yeah, and it's challenging because like I posted some stuff along the way where really people, it's frustrating because I feel like there's a lot of people are stuck in different situations,
different levels of it,
and it frustrates me because truly it's just been for me. It's been, I think the logo that I go by is like, I report, we decide, or I report, you decide. I really try not to weigh in too much because I'm learning too.
You're allowing people to have different perspectives, which is a higher dimensional thinking.
Yeah. And so like, and look, I'm just doing the best that I can. And when these certain people walk into my life and I see them and they start telling me these stories, I get my camera out and I say, hey, can I record this? And just yesterday, Mickey, I ran into a lady and she says she was, I was going to Circle K. And inside Circle K now, because people, it's coming to your doorstep one way or another. Yeah. So we're inside Circle K, and one of the reasons I do the headline newspapers, I wake up every day for my sales job. This is before COVID, and I go to 7-Eleven, I get my coffee, and I just look at the headlines real quick. And that's kind of one of the things that I do consistently. Because now it's so chaotic because most of the places you can't find any newspapers. There's one, or sometimes they're 3 or 4 days old now. And so I was in Circle K, and there's a lady in front of me, and meanwhile there's like a line that's like 10 people deep because the Circle K even now is falling apart. And so it's showing people, these convenience marts are no longer convenient. They're out of stock. Things don't make sense. The computers are glitching. And so there's this lady in front of me and she's talking about something. And I ended up following.
We knew there'd be food shortages. We just didn't expect it in Circle K's, but that's good because that's probably one of the worst places to eat from.
Well, it's just all of it.
Yeah.
You used to stop off to get gas and a coffee. And it took 2 seconds and you're out and about for the rest of your day to make it to work on time. And we can get it all the time as a program, a framework, all these things. Well, now you're standing 15 people deep in a Circle K to buy your coffee. By the time they ring you up, your coffee's getting cold. Yeah. It wasn't like that before. So there's that example. Then just yesterday, so I run this lady and I got her number. I'm going to try to do more with her. So we start chatting. What are you doing? She says, she said to me something like, do you want a job? And I was like, oh, what kind of job? And she said, what was it, Robert? It was keys for cash, cash for keys. So somehow she said she's been doing this for 6 years or 4 years. And she said no work for the last 2 years. And now she has more work than she can handle. And she's working for banks. And what they're doing is she's going out and taking photos of homes because the banks are now moving on the foreclosure. And she said she had guns pulled on her, right? She's going up to these properties to take photos for the bank who, on paper, owns the deed and all that. And she's taking pictures. The people are coming to the front door and pulling guns on her. She told me this yesterday. She says, she's so busy, she can't keep up. And she says, they're hiring. And she says, what I want to do this thing called cash for keys, which I guess, Robert, is like, the banks are looking for people that are willing to go to these properties, knock on the doors and say, hey, we'll give you a certain amount of cash for the keys to the property. So all that is now coming up. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is because these divine appointments, as I like to call them, it's just, to me, it's not coincidence that I run this lady in front of me buying coffee and she shares this information with me. So it's all that stuff that's just kind of happening.
That cash for keys, it sounds like the bank's trying to contract to get out of their situation because they're in big trouble right now. So trying to get people to contract. So if someone comes and asks you for cash or keys, I probably would not accept that contract, just so people know.
Yeah, well, there's a whole.
That doesn't sound good. I mean, but that's something that who would pick up on except for you, because you happen to be traveling and you're picking up on, again, knowledge and information and perspective.
Yeah.
That gives us an idea of what's happening on the ground. I feel like if everybody did that and we started working more on a quantum field, then we wouldn't be looking through like literally a peephole of the news. We'd be seeing much more broad, you know, and we'd be able to watch over our communities with more of an eagle eye versus this illusion eye that they've created for us, right? This illusion of reality. Now you have had your hardships in the past and you've done some personal work. And I'm not trying to necessarily draw that out of you right now, but I think that a lot of people are doing personal work. A lot of people are making major life changes, quitting alcohol, doing, you know, things that are pretty major in renegotiating contracts and relationships, et cetera. Would you say there's any like majorly, really, really good things that have come out of this?
For me? Oh yeah. I mean, so many things. So when, you know, living in DC like I was and seeing what happened there, because I also covered some, you know, the federal buildings not having workers and the homeless explosion, and then just I equate it to like wells drying up. So again, if I take it back to my old life when I was in sales, I do these sales calls and a lot of them were in the evening because you meet with someone at 5 when they got off work to give them the estimate. I didn't know in-house sales. I sold a number of things, but solar is one that I sold. I was really successful at solar, selling that. And then and in-house remodeling, things like roofs and doors and windows and flooring and things. So just a lot of that stuff. And I also did, I worked for Merrill Lynch for a while and did mortgage-backed security stuff. And, you know, when the real estate market was exploding. But when I'd finish up a lot of those meetings, I would then, wherever I was, I'd find the nearest bar that was a decent restaurant. And because, you know, I was working on commission but I still need to eat. So I'd go into the bar and I'd get, you know, a dinner and then I'd get a couple of drinks. And that was just my habit. And then I'd drive the rest of the way home. So, you know, dinner, 2 drinks, 2 hours of time, get in, head home for the night. And then on weekends and stuff, I might go out and drink a little more or whatever. And then when COVID hit, I was in such kind of like, couldn't believe it, that I was drinking like a lot, you know, some days it'd be like noon and I already did in 2 hours worth of footage. Cause I've always been someone that wakes up early. And so by the time noon would hit, I'd be like, you know, like what's going on here? And then I did that for a while and that's kind of dried up. And and then just had a lot of relationships that weren't in the greatest shape as well. So like my dad and mom, like we've gotten a lot closer through COVID. Some of my other friends, childhood friends and stuff, people that I've relinked back up, wrestlers from my wrestling team in high school that I hadn't heard from in 20 years. We're now communicating and regrowing those friendships. And on the other side of it, a lot of the other friendships and relationships are dying away because they just didn't have the right foundation to begin with. Then I'm not saying their fault or my fault, all of our faults. So that's all growing. And even like 2 nights ago, so I've really cut back. The one thing I still do is smoke, and I'm working on giving that up. But even the drinking, I've cut back on it so much that I had 1 drink the other night and like I just was like, whoa, what's happening? So there's a lot of, you know, just because I've cut back on. So there's a lot of things happening, and I just
like we're becoming self-aware in ways that like old patterns and behaviors don't actually serve us anymore. A time of discourse, one of the best things you can do is ask yourself, well, what was I meant to learn in this experience? And it sounds like you've definitely not only opened yourself up to the experience in general, but you've opened yourself up to change. What would you say about the people who are stuck in their ways and don't really want to change and don't want to ascend, or maybe are going to take it in pieces? Because that's kind of a guy thing. I mean, I just trying to say, like in the Matrix, it seems as though men have been conditioned to think they can't have emotion, they can't go to counseling, they can't admit when they're wrong, they have to control all those things around them, even their women. And there's really 2 types of guys. There's those that are going to change, but then they'll go right back, or those will just admit that they're never going to change. So do you know what I mean? This has almost forced a lot of men to look inside, and I think that's really pretty powerful. I mean, I'm excited to see the divine masculine rising, and you've always been pretty honest with me about that. So that's why I'm drawing it out of you right now. Like, would you say that the divine masculine is coming forth?
Well, I've been saying for a while, where are all the men? And I'm hoping it's coming forth. I see some of it, but not like I feel like I should. You know, men need to step into the role, you know.
And I think they need to step in the role actually of realizing their divine power in universal quantum realm, instead 100%. Instead of forcing, instead of controlling, instead of fight, flight, freeze, there is another option, and that is to surrender and shift energy and move that energy field and actually give women the space to have, to have some say and
100%.
to allow for energies to come forth that maybe we've controlled or blocked.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I equate a lot of to this ego thing for men more than women, I would say. But, look, I was fortunate. I grew up with a mom and dad who are still married, and I've seen my dad cry more times than I can count. When me and my mother or father, when we talk on the phone, and I talk to them probably at least once a week, sometimes more than others. But, it's a race to see who can say I love you first when we get off the phone, like my dad, I love you. I love you. So I'm fortunate in that way that I've always been kind of okay with crying. I don't think that's like a weak thing. If anything, I think it's probably a place of strength. And what I was thinking of a minute ago too, is like, I remember during the COVID thing, when the shutdowns happened, I remember my frame of mind, what I was thinking. I remember driving past liquor stores and seeing people in lawn chairs sitting out next to the liquor store because it didn't open until 10 and they literally line up. And then I remember also seeing people just diving in, doing their own research, waking up on their computers, and everyone it was a period of time, and we're still kind of in it, where people really got the opportunity to have all this extra time on their hands. And what did you decide to do with it? And so mine has been like a tidal wave of a lot of different things. But that's right. So what part did you dive into? And I think that as we keep going here, ultimately, like what I can say for myself is I keep asking to learn more, to become better, and get lessons. And they come at me. I mean, they're coming hard right now. A lot of things are happening in my life behind the scenes that are very challenging, but I'm doing the best I can to try to be the best person, to navigate the best that I can, learn and grow. And I think if we all lean into that, we all are continuing to get to a better place. And it's not without pain. It's not without extreme difficulty. But then also it comes with an amazing amount of accomplishment or joy, or just a next level of learning, and you evolved or ascend or whatever the words people want to use, but so for me, it's like, I guess kind of like, I remember in sales, I make a sale, and the next day the customer called me and they're trying to cancel. Well, Richard, you got us all wound up in our emotions, and we made a decision we shouldn't have made. I remember just like avoiding that call. Like, no, I'm not going to, I'm just going to let the 24-hour cancellation period go by and keep the deal, whatever. Or it's like this avoidance. And now it's kind of like, it's difficult, but I engage it, so when I get the difficult call from an old friend, or some challenge that's happening out there in the world, or some accusation, we talked a little bit more early, you and I, a little early, about some of the stuff I've been through. And now I'm just like, okay, let's hit it head on. Let's hit it head on. Let me learn from it. Let me try to do the best I can in that, whatever the case is, and then move on from it.
And sometimes it's just about giving people their own perspective and allowing them to have their own perspective, and literally just accepting it, no matter where it is, what it is, without judgment at all. Just, wow, that's a really neat perspective. And I think you're doing a really great thing working on that perspective. And when they're ready to move, they'll move. And it's not our job to tell them when or how or what.
Or to judge it.
You're fearless. I mean, you have a fearless aspect to you, and you're kind of a go, and move, mover and shaker. But I think you help us move through fear of actually knowing the truth. I mean, you're shedding light. You're shedding light on truth. And there's nothing that could ever come bad out of knowing more truth.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to say, Mickey, sometimes I've gotten it wrong. I thought I was at the truth. And like, it's funny. I've run into these situations where I'm looking and I'm like, this is very strange. What's going on here? And then in my mind is making its own assumptions. And then I'll kind of go around the corner. I'll see someone, and I'll have my own story made up in my brain, what I think the situation is. And I can't think of a good example now, but it happens often.
Because you're moving it through your projector.
But then I'll meet someone there, and I'll be like, why is this like this? And they tell me why it is. And then it all makes sense.
Yeah, because you're now seeing their perspective.
Right. But what I was making up in my own head based on the last 2 or 3 years of events. And it's like, okay, well, this makes sense. And on the flip side of that too, sometimes I'm dead on right. Or sometimes it's more than I thought it was. And I try to put that up on the internet the best I can and show people a lot of that stuff too. So it's an incredible time to be alive, and I just kind of am leaning into this, and I hope that the stuff that I'm doing is helping others. That's what's being of service. I try to think about my day, and I think, like, I wake up and I pray and I say, okay, God, thank you for letting me be here again today. And I put on my armor and food in my belly, and just rest my head. And gratitude for you and the people that I'm involved with, and just what's going on out here, and to be the best version of myself, but also to be 51% or more of service, whatever that is. And that can be anything. It can be holding a door for somebody. It can be, we were just doing sandbags. Robert and Rebecca were with me, and we were with a friend, and there's a situation in Flagstaff, Arizona. It was a big fire, and there's a scar in the mountain now. And they're saying that there's a heavy rain, it can just basically wash away these houses. And so, and then sandbags are heavy. So, we spent half a day out there doing that work. And so it's anything, but I try to think in my own head, and even to my postings on the internet, just being of service. And
let's be real. So it says in the end time prophecy that we would start to become judged by our works. Your works are constant. From the minute you get up till the minute you go to bed, I would probably proclaim to you that you're at service.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, and we don't give each other a pat on the back enough, especially as influencers. I mean, influencers are infighting, man. Why don't we give each other enough credit?
I know.
Everyone's providing this beautiful, like, I don't know, just perspective.
Yeah.
And it's uniquely yours. And that's something that has value. So why don't we just value our works and just be, because honestly, God gave us each unique talents to express and share value. In fact, he wants you to get up every morning and just be who you're meant to be and share your works openly without having to go through the grind. Just the fact that you left the grind opened you up to be a giver.
Well, yeah. And it's been something that's been in me for a long time. I mean, I volunteered for the Army at 17, did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked for Outback Steakhouse, who Outback used to be great. I don't think it's as great, but anyway, they used to do these local events where they had Outback Hummer and the grill, and it was volunteer. And so the owner of the restaurant would say, hey, does anyone want to go help out, serve the Boy Scouts or this thing? And everyone would say no, because everyone always wanted to make their $150 tips and then go. But I'd always say, yes, I want to get, and it was a cool thing of giving back to the community. So it's always kind of been in me. And when you say the grind, I mean, look, I think I'm grinding harder now than ever before in terms of work. I mean, every day it's work.
Addicting. It's addicting when you actually do get in the flow. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of in the flow of what your guys are giving you every day.
Yeah.
And there are no coincidences. Like every single person you've run across, you've learned something from, good or bad or ugly. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool. Well, I'm proud of you. I'm really glad that we got to have this sort of opening, because you and I are about to do an 8-part series on how our country was invaded in 1871 and what we can do about it. And why we're in the state we're in, because it's just another perspective that allows us to make a better choice, right?
Yeah.
A more honorable choice. And the more we walk in honor, the better we feel, and the more our cells resonate. And again, I just want to say too to people, sometimes when you take in new knowledge, especially knowledge that you bring, it's really okay to put it on the shelf.
Sure.
It's on the shelf until you feel like making it part of your belief system. It doesn't have to be part of your belief system because you don't agree with Richard in the moment. You might agree with him 5 months from now, or you might disagree for your whole life. It doesn't really matter. It's just you put it on a shelf. You take it in as new knowledge, you expand your thinking, and that's going to ultimately expand your awareness of all things in your life,
Right. And also when something comes in like that for me, like, especially if I'm feeling overly emotional about it, I like to put it on a shelf for a while. Anyway, I had a thing the other night that really hit me hard. What was that, 2 nights ago, Robert? Yeah. And I wanted to react, and it was,
Why don't you go into this one? This was do you mind telling the story?
Well, I don't know which one you're thinking I'm going to tell.
The interview that you did was controversial. Is that what you're talking about?
No, this is something totally separate.
Okay.
And I just remember I heard my dad's words in my head, which are quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. I heard the words, a harsh word stirs up anger and a gentle word turns back wrath. But I was like all gripping my steering wheel, feeling it. And so when you're talking about putting something on a shelf, it's like when you start feeling this stuff, because I see it in the comments, right? I post something and people are like, bang, 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 bang. And
they're so angry.
Well, whatever it is, but
they're probably hitting those keys really hard sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed it firsthand. Bang, bang, bang. And I would just say, as we're learning and growing and all this stuff, like it's important to pause too. And if something's affecting you so much in your emotions, maybe it's just let that sit on the shelf for a little while and revisit it, versus because when we quickly react, sometimes it's not the best reaction. And then we look back and we say, shit, and I don't live with regret, but shoot, why? And when I say that out loud to everyone listening, I'm saying it to myself, right? I'm taking notes for myself. So, and then the big, huge problem that I had that night when I woke up the next day, it wasn't so bad. And then I was able to address it and get through it. And so just all those kinds of things. So.
Well, everything is a reflection. Everything is a projection. And ultimately, so we're learning the laws of discernment. We understand that our cells respond to certain information. So this is spiritual boot camp at its finest. We're moving quick.
No question. On the job training.
What resonates, right?
Yeah.
But then what was I just say? One of the things I say a lot in my comments to people is especially if they're negative, I'm like, all judgment is self-judgment. So just go easier on yourself next time. That just seems to make me feel better.
Yeah,
It just kind of puts it right back on them and go, you know what, you should reflect on what you just said.
Yeah, I mean,
Because everything you do is creating a ripple effect in the quantum. So why even put it
Right.
out there? Maybe some of those comments should be thought out before they jot them down, because they're just being kind of mad and they have no idea what it's like to be in your shoes.
Yeah, and I grew up in a household where you know, we didn't call each other names. Like, sure, me and my brother and sisters, we'd fight and stuff, but we didn't grow up in a name calling household. And then as people call me names, which is often good and bad, right?
And the more the followers, the more the names, right?
Well, and I think of it like, gosh, if you're calling me this, what do you think about yourself? You know, or are you calling yourself this? You're just aiming it at me. You know, kind of that's how I feel about it. 'Cause I like to lead with love and understanding. And I think we're getting through it. And you even brought up some of the infighting that's going on now. I mean, yeah, I'm appreciative to all these quote unquote influencers. We're putting something out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whether right or wrong or played out the way they said it would or it didn't, I'm grateful for it all. You know, because it's helping all of us learn and ascend and all these things. So
I love it.
yeah.
Well, let's get started with our little series.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on.
You want to cut this here and then we'll start it
Yeah,
on?
we'll cut this and we'll start our first series.
All right, cut.
Bye.